Hey, this is an audio only show. Play us in the background as you do whatever it is that you do. Thanks for listening and welcome to the Messy Mic. Please remember to like and subscribe. All right, let's get into it. Have you heard this?
No athlete can afford to fly private all the time. I got guys 22 making $200 million over the next 4 or 5 years. I got several of those guys, right? I'm constantly telling them that's not a lot of money.
That's Rich Paul talking about how players, uh, $200 million is not a lot of money, and the lifestyle creep that these NBA players have acquired over the last few years. Have you not noticed the secret PR campaign that NBA players are doing with breaking down their salaries recently? Kuzma comes out recently, NBA player, and he tweets or X's or whatever you want to call it these days. Not gonna lie, it's exhausting hearing athletes break down how their millions aren't really millions, and after taxes, fees, and 40 million after taxes is still 40 million. He says the real issue isn't the system, it's lifestyle creep. Nobody told you to live like a king, buy 5 cars, or move in with 10-person entourage. Modest is allowed. And I also saw another athlete start to break down, or former NBA player break down how his $2 million contract was really only 900 and some odd dollars after taxes. And they keep breaking down their checks to us. Why? What type of sympathy do they think that they're going to get to everyday people who spend their expendable income on tickets, jerseys, etc., putting money into these teams' pockets that allow them to afford a job, because it is a job in which they make more money than the average American. They make more money than the average American. The lowest paid NBA player with the absolute lowest standard salary clears over 1.2 million more per year than the average American. This means that they make roughly 20 times what the average US worker brings home. Even if you look at two-way contracts, which are hybrid deals for development players who bounce back and forth between the NBA and the minor leagues, i.e., the G League, they still make 569,000 more than the average American, nearly 10 times more than the average US salary. According to data from the US Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the average weekly salary for an American worker is $1,291, um, dollars, an annual approximation of 67,000 a year, pretty much. The lowest NBA salary, a standard rookie minimum for a player on a standard full-time 15-man NBA roster with 0 years of experience, the mandatory minimum is 1.3 mil. 1.3 mil, pretty much. A two-way contract for depth players who split their time between the NBA roster and the G League pays a flat rate of 636,000, pretty much, approximately. And they're breaking down to us on these shows and on these podcasts and on these panels how that's not enough money. It is a disgrace on how entitled these people have become. You make enough where you can put a nice down payment on a decent home in a decent area. You can buy a nice car, a decent car. You could put money into in a retirement account and you can live nicely. And you got the nerve to go on a secret campaign, or not secret, but a covert campaign on these shows to break down your salary to folks trying to figure out groceries. Folks who may have lost homes recently, folks who just lost their job, folks who use sports as an escapism. This is not a mandatory job. This job does not save lives, does not teach children, does not watch children. It is not, Tim, it is not even as helpful as an Uber driver, because the Uber driver gonna get you to where you have to go. You bring entertainment. Entertainment is a luxury, it is an extra piece that people use to escape their daily lives. to decompress. And you have the nerve to get on these shows and break down your $1,000,000 salaries and tell us that's not enough after taxes, as if folks can't see how much money they're losing on a daily basis after taxes. And so my complaint with this is you either need to get more politically active as an NBA player and start looking at your state taxes and what's coming out. You need to be more active in other types of things that are around you. You need to go touch grass besides touch a basketball because this is looking bad. You want us to spend our expendable income on watching you, also our expendable time watching you and feeling bad that you have two-a-days and a team that provides you with free healthcare because you get healthcare beyond the average American as well. They are getting special science, like special sports science down to the millisecond of each of their actions, broken down to them about their body, along with the medication, food, dietitian, any other meds that they need to become the best that they can be athletically. And they're gonna sit here and tell us that's not enough money when there's people who are losing their health insurance every single day. They have team cafeterias in which they can eat, and we just got contaminated lettuce. I think they need to think about what the average person is going through before they start complaining about the money that they're getting. I get that they spent their whole life doing this. I get that it's not necessarily an easy thing. It is a sport. And I get that they provide entertainment to folks and they provide a labor that makes their team owners rich. But to come out and say this as a sympathy campaign is almost it's disrespectful to the average person. I think that's something that they need to have a better PR centered around. I'm not saying that their complaints as laborers isn't valid to their contract that they negotiated with the league, but they need to be more conscious of what they're saying. And so for those who don't know why they're in a squeeze right now, it's basically because there's a change in their contract. And what happens with this so-called second apron. So if you don't know what second apron is, I'll break it down really quickly. The second apron is the highest, most restrictive spending tier in the NBA salary cap. In previous years, wealthy teams could simply pay a financial luxury tax as a penalty to keep highly expensive players and star-studded rosters together. So think about like when LeBron went to Miami and then he goes to the Lakers and they also go pull in, several other heavy hitters on the team and they try to be like these NBA winning teams. I'm not going to get too deep into it because I just want to break it down for folks to understand. So, if the second apron is confusing to you, think of the second apron as a danger zone on a team's spending meter. To understand and imagine a team's budget looks like, think of the budget as like a tower. To understand and imagine a team's budget, think of it as a tower with three different lines drawn on it. The first line is the safe budget, that's the salary cap. And now the salary cap is based on several things, but also, like, how much revenue the NBA makes. So, each year, the salary cap can change, and over the last few years, it's been higher than lower, except recently, the overall salary cap has been, lowered. So, this is the normal amount of money the NBA says every team should spend on its players, and if you stay under that line, you're totally fine, totally safe, and the league leaves you alone, so you can go ahead get draft picks, make a bunch of contracts, do certain trades to get folks. You can do that. However, the line 2 is the warning line, which is the first apron. And if a team wants to get a really good person, they might choose to spend extra money to keep their star players. So once they cross this first line, the NBA gives them a warning. The league says, okay, you could do this, but we're going to make it a little harder for you to get new players. So if you get your one good player, you can't go out and get a bunch of other players and pay tons of money to recruit those other really good star-studded players to make these super teams. And then if you do that, then like line 3 comes in and this is what's known as the second apron and it's the absolute highest line on the spending meter. If a team crosses this line, it means they have spent a crazy amount of money on their roster. And once a team steps over the second apron, a giant red alarm goes off. Think of it that way and the NBA hits them with the heaviest punishments possible. And we talk about before the league even freezes their this is as we talk about before, or we talk about where the league freezes their draft choices, takes away special coupons, or like their ability to it's just like a coupon, but their ability to acquire players, and make it almost impossible for them to trade new players. And so before the second apron existed, ultra rich team owners could just pay a cash fine, like a little swear jar, and keep buying whatever players wanted. And it wasn't fair to teams with less money. So that's why the NBA created the second apron. And they say, we don't care how rich your team owner is anymore. If you spend this past this line, we are just going to take your money. We're going to break your video game controller so you won't and can't cheat your way to a championship anymore. And so with that being said, there are punishments for this. So first, no mid-level exceptions, which means like no allowance coupons. You can think of them as allowances. So usually the NBA team, when they're out of money, the league gives them one special ability or coupon each year. You can think of it that way. And this coupon lets them buy one pretty good player for a decent amount of money. And if a player enters the second apron, the league rips that coupon. So if you start going over, your budget or the cap, you don't get that ability to acquire that high price player. So imagine if you wanted to buy a cool new video game and you spent all of your allowance. Usually your parents give you a $50 gift card once a year to help you out, right? You spent your allowance, you get a little help with the gift card. Because you went way over budget, they take the gift card away. And now you can only buy games from the $5 bargain bin. In the NBA, teams can now only hire players for the lowest possible price, the minimal contracts. And there's no bundling, so there's trade restrictions. So, for instance, you could trade like 2 or 3 players to get 1 player. What this means is teams can trade a bunch of cheap players to get one expensive star back, or they can trade a player and get back someone who makes a little bit more. The second apron now bans this, so trades have to be almost perfect dollar for dollar match. You can't like bundle a bunch of players to get one good player. So think about it this way. If you had 3 Pokemon cards worth 15, I mean, sorry, if you had 3 Pokemon cards worth $5 each, you want to trade all 3 of them to your friends for one awesome card worth $15. The NBA steps in and says, "Nope, you can't combine your cards. You can only trade one card for $5 for another $5 card." This makes it almost impossible for rich teams to trade for superstars. And the other part of the penalty is frozen draft picks, so grounding your draft picks, so you're getting grounded almost. Every year in the NBA, teams get draft picks, right, which are like golden tickets to choose the best new players out of college. Teams love to trade these future tickets or these future draft picks to get players right now. So if you spend too much money, the NBA freezes your ticket or your draft abilities so you can't trade it. So even worse, if you stay in trouble for too long, they push your ticket to the very back of the line, which means you get the last of the draft picks. So, for example, if you have a golden ticket that lets you be fifth in line for a brand new playground game, you want to trade that ticket to a friend for his cool bike. The principal steps in and says, "Hey, you're grounded. You can't trade that ticket." Then, because you kept breaking the rules, the principal moves you to the very end of the line. So you kept trying to sell this ticket, even though they told you no. The principal finds out you're going back to the back. So when they try to keep selling these draft picks and trying to make things work, the NBA steps in and says, "No, you can't do that." So and then no buyout signings. So no picking up freebies. What does this mean? Sometimes in the middle of the season, a bad team will fire a good veteran player and pay him to leave. So like a buyout. Oh, a buyout. So like a buyout. That player becomes a freebie that anyone can sign. Rich teams used to love scooping up these players right before the playoffs. Now the super rich teams aren't allowed to touch them. For example, imagine a kid at lunch decide he doesn't want his delicious chocolate pudding and he puts it on the free table for anyone to take. You already stuffed with a massive lunch. And so the teacher tells you, no, you've had enough, step away from the pudding and let the hungry kids have a turn. In the NBA, the pudding goes to the regular, less expensive teams instead. So once you've eaten all, like used your cap, you done all, spent all your money. And even if there's a player available, you can't just go ahead and scoop them up. You had your fill, you've had enough. The NBA says no. So why players are doing this PR campaign is because teams essentially are not spending as much money because they don't wanna go into the second apron, and most teams now are even trying to stay at the cap, which means you are these stars who are making 100, 200,000,000, folks who are signing these large contracts, and then teams were still acquiring, um, star-studded players for large contracts, so you may have 2 or 3 large contracts on your team, that's no longer available. And you have someone like Jalen Brunson who, forgoed 100 mil to bring his players to or the people he wanted to the Knicks, and they won, is essentially what the NBA is trying to do. They want different types of teams to be able to win championships, and you gotta make your own sacrifices for that, and players don't wanna do that. My thing is, this is something you negotiated, you're finding out alternative, impacts to this, and complaining to us about it on television when the average person doesn't make this. And I just think they need a different PR campaign centered around this and not come crying to the average American about how their $975,000 is not enough to live off of. It is belittling and rude. It's disrespectful. And it's coming to the point where you realize these folks think that they are so much more than they are. And they have a job like anybody else. They're not the CEO or owners. They are players. They are players. Essentially, they play a game of basketball and they are athletic. They're very athletic, and that is a gift in itself to those who value that. But to talk to people in a way that is almost just demeaning to folks to hear them complain that they're not that they're struggling. Join in the average American's fight to try to increase their salary. Join in and maybe get political. You don't have to get online and politically active, but just peep around what policies make this happen. Maybe read a little bit more. Maybe talk to some outside counsel. Use the money you do have for some education and some good around your contracts, and your negotiations. Uh, and maybe sympathize with the folks more. Maybe do a little bit more turkey giveaways. Maybe a little bit more community help, maybe be with the people more. I don't know, but this is disgusting.